The NBA playoffs have arrived, and the best odds on basketball are on Novig. Stop paying sportsbook fees and start making your predictions on America's #1 sports trading app. Check out Novig and use code WOJ to get $50 worth of Novig coins when you spend your first $5. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older to play. Please play responsibly.
He says, hey, were you intentionally walking Shohei Ohtani that night, who got on base 9 times in one game, 2 more times than anyone ever had in postseason history in a single game? Said, were you walking him to try and tire him out for the next day? And John says, I've never admitted this before, but yes, that's exactly what we were trying to do.
Welcome into ESPN's Jeff Passan, my good friend, and now the host of his new podcast on ESPN on Omaha, Sources Tell Jeff Passan. Jeff, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Woj. Everyone's got a podcast now, and I was just jealous. So here I am in your world.
Well, my former world, but Sources Tell Jeff Passan. How did you come up with that? Was that the easiest name of a pod that you came up with it in 5 minutes, or did that one take a while? How'd that one come to you?
No, this one came in the middle of the night when we were struggling for an actual name. I wanted to call it Baseball 101, but that was a little too professorial. And frankly, I give you credit for this because the whole Sources Tell, it kind of came from you breaking news, did it not? Before Woj came along, did anyone really care? Sources Tell whoever? No, you made that popular, and now I totally cribbed it for my podcast name. So thank you for that, Adrian. I appreciate it.
If there was any contribution, Jeff, I'm glad to make it. Pod's been great so far, and this is a team building pod, and that's what the program is. But your interview with John Schneider and Dave Roberts, the 2 managers of the last World Series, that epic LA Dodger, Toronto Blue Jay World Series, putting those 2 together in a room together and kind of walking through some of the real, seminal moments of that series. Terrific idea to get them together. And I think it speaks to kind of what you're trying to do. It's going to be a different podcast. This isn't going to just be you. You may just talk and talk baseball, but also sort of getting inside the minds, right, of decision makers, leaders, which is what you've always done. Not what happened, but the whys.
Yeah, and I thought this was especially an opportunity not just to recount all of those interesting things that happened in Game 7 and in the 6 games that preceded it, but to tie in these larger themes that every team has an identity, right? Every team forges an identity, whether it's a top-down thing coming from management and being filtered through the manager, or sometimes it's the manager himself who says, I want my team to play this way. And being able to tie all of those things back into the individual moments that happened during the World Series and give that greater perspective and give that greater context. The whole goal of this show to me is to make smarter baseball fans and to give people insight, because how lucky we are, getting to talk with the decision makers and with the people who in that moment are making choices that are going to have a profound impact on history, understanding the why is really the most important part and the stuff that you can learn from. And it's why I was so appreciative of John and Dave for their willingness to do it. Generally that's the sort of thing you see 10, 15 years down the road when they're separated from it. This was fresh. Like this, the wounds were still very clear for the Toronto Blue Jays, and the joy very much so for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And so I think it was both of them respect the way that the other goes about his job, and both of them saw it as an opportunity themselves to learn, to understand why some of these things that made the history that they did actually wound up happening.
What was the biggest surprise? You knew what questions you would ask and what points of the series that you might focus on. The 18-inning Game 3 was obviously, one of the great baseball games in history, given the stakes and the drama of that game. But did one or two responses or from Roberts, from Schneider, maybe surprise you more than others?
Yeah, it was from that 18-inning game, actually, because the best moments on this show are the ones where the guests talk with one another. Like, I can ask questions, but it's when they're going back and forth and trading insight and answers to each other that I think it really finds its rhythm. And Dave Roberts stops the conversation at one point and says, "Hey, I got a question to ask you." And I'm sitting there with like a smile on my face, because when one manager says that to the other, something's coming good. And he says, "Hey, were you intentionally walking Shohei Ohtani that night, who got on base 9 times in one game, 2 more times than anyone ever had in postseason history in a single game?" Said, "Were you walking him to try and tire him out for the next day?" And John says, "I've never admitted this before, but yes, that's exactly what we were trying to do." And to see John then walk through the way that the Blue Jays were thinking about this and what their strategy was, and to see Dave Roberts then acknowledging that was a really smart thing to do. That's the game behind the game. That's that second and third level type of thinking that, as much as we want to backseat manage a game, as much as you want to criticize a coach for strategy or for a play he called or for a timeout that he didn't take, there's usually reason behind the decision. And it might not be the right reason. Like, they can acknowledge in the aftermath that, hey, I should have done this or should have done that. But it's not like these people who are making the decisions are doing so from a frivolous place. They care more than you, more than your friends, more than your family, more than anyone you know. This is their livelihood. This is what they do. This is what they judge themselves on. And so to think they would go into this willy-nilly or unprepared, I think we all need to acknowledge just the difficulty in being in the moment and having to make decisions when you've got 100 other things swirling around you that could have a tangible impact on that next play.
And you said at the beginning, Jeff, it's hard to get competitors to do this so quickly after a game. It might be 5 years later. It might be, people are doing a 5-year history or a 10-year history of a series or a game. But to get it before the next World Series is played, you're right. There's a rawness to it. I think when you get two people like that, one of the favorite podcasts I ever did was Bob Myers and Draymond Green together in Golden State after Kevin Durant had left, right after that final season in Golden State. And I asked them about the Draymond incident with Durant in Oklahoma City, and I think the finals, maybe the finals when Draymond, I think, lost the game in the finals. But talking to them about that period in time, and I remember Draymond answering a question about when Bob had gone in and had laid into him. They'd had some hard conversations, and how Draymond felt about it. And Bob, when I went to ask the next question, Bob stopped me and said, whoa, I want to go back to this Draymond. And now it became him and Draymond talking through this on the podcast about some things they hadn't talked about that year and how they felt about each other going through it. And that's when it's at its best, when you're out of it.
Oh, yeah. And I try that. We filmed an episode earlier today. I want to, every episode I try to have a theme. The first episode, it's Tarek Skubal and Paul Skeens. I want to talk about what it's like to be the best pitcher in the world. And that episode with Roberts and Schneider, what's it like to manage a Game 7 of the World Series? And today I talked with Aaron Boone and Joe West about what it's like to both be ejected and to eject a player from a game. And when those two were going back and forth, just telling stories about being on the field, like that's the stuff that I will never know. I will never know what it feels like to be down there in that moment. And so anytime I think people who are involved in sports want to tell us these stories, and it's why whatever the medium is, whether it's the written word, whether it's video, whether it's audio podcast, to me that's the role and that's the function that reporters need to play. We need to be conduits to tell the stories that happen that we just would not see otherwise. And thankfully you and I both have found ourselves in positions where the people who are creating those stories have grown a level of trust for us that we're going to be proper stewards to go and tell them.
The NBA playoffs have arrived, and the best odds on basketball are on Novig. Stop paying sportsbook fees and start making your predictions on America's #1 sports trading app. Check out Novig and use code Woj to get $50 worth of Novig coins when you spend your first $5. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older to play. Please play responsibly. You're a student, Jeff, of team building. You have been. In baseball, it's so unique because, we have seen teams can be championship contenders, but not be among the highest spending organizations in the league. We've seen teams who are at the very top of the spending, who aren't spending it well, who don't have a structure. Typically, you can't just do it through free agency. You can't just do it if you don't have a farm system, if you don't develop players, if you don't have some low-cost talent that you bring up, and you're always going to overpay in free agency. It's not any different than the world I'm in now. You're going to overpay in the portal, right? And so you want to be able to develop your own players, keep them, create an environment that they want to stay in, but then you have to have the resources. It's still going to cost a lot to keep them. But the difference in baseball is you can draft an 18-year-old player. You can evaluate them. You can scout them. And then you have control of them for several years before he can become a free agent. And it's several years before you can, then there's a few years until you can have first crack at signing him to an extension. The hard part for us is we have perpetual free agency. You can find a player, you can bring somebody in that maybe others didn't value in a certain way, but he's a free agent right away. And then it's hard, really hard, especially financially with the Gulf, right? That's what's different.
I don't know how you do it. I mean, I genuinely don't understand how anyone in college does it these days, because at least in Major League Baseball, when you draft a guy, you have 4 years to put him on the big league roster. Once he's on the big league roster, you can option him up and down. And then eventually he has to complete another 6 full years of service time to reach free agency. So that when you draft a player in Major League Baseball or sign a player at 16 years old out of Latin America, that you've got control of him for about a decade. And yet I look at all the different avenues that you can take to building a team in Major League Baseball, and the prevalence of the Milwaukee Brewers and the Tampa Bay Rays and the Cleveland Guardians and these teams that don't have monstrous payrolls, and yet year after year after year, they continue to be successful. And it's the thing, I think, to me, that I appreciate most about modern baseball, the way that it is genuinely for anyone to succeed. Now, I understand the Dodgers, when they're going out and spending $400 million, and on top of that, running their program as well as anybody out there, whether it's through scouting analytics, player development, player happiness when they're at the big league level. Like the Dodgers are at tip top in almost all of those areas. So it becomes extraordinarily difficult to compete with a team that does everything well procedurally, and on top of that is able to buy away mistakes. Like that's what money is in baseball. It gives you the opportunity to screw up. And the Dodgers, they take advantage of that. And it's why they are the overwhelming favorites, even with the Braves and the Yankees and other teams off to good starts right now. The Dodgers are the gold standard. But to me, it is those Milwaukees and Tampas and Clevelands that make the sport great, because they show that even if you don't have all the resources, you have to figure out ways to be creative enough to compete in this environment that, as of now, doesn't even have a salary cap.
The Oakland Athletics never won a World Series in that Billy Beane era. How dramatically did that organization, the book, Moneyball by Michael Lewis, the movie with Brad Pitt playing Billy Beane, did it change not just the way front offices thought they could or should operate, but when you put it into a movie? And I would think that it might have given it credibility to owners who go, oh, okay, that legitimizes it for me, because I wonder the impact that era had on all these organizations now who have found a pathway to competing with much less, lower payrolls.
I think that's the right point, Adrian. Moneyball didn't change baseball. Moneyball changed sports. And you see it everywhere now, the proliferation of analytics and in the acceptance. I think in basketball, all we have to do is just look at the shots that are taken. It has completely fundamentally overhauled the game. How many mid-range specialists do you recruit?
It's not the goal. Yeah, right. You want to be good at the rim, right? You want to be good behind the 3-point line, and you want to have players who can score at the rim and get to the free throw line.
Yeah, and that is completely different than the game of basketball that we grew up watching. But, watching games evolve in real time, I think, is kind of the fun of it, because in baseball, there are constants. The mound is 60 feet 6 inches from home plate. Home plate is 17 inches wide. When you make contact with the ball, you're running 90 feet to first base. All of these things stay the same. And yet the way you go about trying to execute these things since Moneyball has come into play has changed completely, because I think it did open the eyes of people to say that even in this sport where, generally speaking, we hold on to history, and we don't just hold on to it. Like, baseball worships its history. It is steeped in it. You see it everywhere. The way that people talk about old time players, I think in a different way than other sports. The notion that we're going to embrace an entirely new paradigm, and that it's going to be the guiding principle for most teams, is something that took a little while to really catch on, but now it's just the new normal. It's what's expected, and the implementation of technology around the sport, I think, has done a fantastic job, not just of teaching fans what the game is really like, but teaching players too. If you are not fluent in technological language right now, if you are not a pitcher who, even in high school, can look at a TrackMan plot and say, these are my pitches, these are their shapes, and this is why I'm going about doing it, then you're way behind. It's an expectation now rather than something that players can use to separate and differentiate themselves.
Hey guys, let me take a minute to tell you about Surfshark VPN. If you're like me, you're constantly on the move, different networks, airports, hotels, and public Wi-Fi. And every time you connect, your data can be exposed in ways you probably don't think about. That's where Surfshark comes in. Surfshark is a VPN that helps protect your online activity by encrypting your data, so what you're doing stays private. It also lets you access content from different regions, which is useful whether you're traveling or just trying to get around restrictions. And another thing I like is that one subscription can cover all of your devices, your phone, your laptop, everything, all protected at the same time. And it helps secure those public Wi-Fi connections, which are where a lot of people are most vulnerable. The setup is simple and it runs in the background, so you don't have to think about it once it's on. So if you're looking to add a layer of security to your everyday internet use, this is a smart move. Go to surfshark.com/Woj or use code Woj at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. That's surfshark.com/Woj, and you can also find the link and details in the show notes. And it comes with a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. I asked Adam Schefter this when we talked about power structure of NFL teams, front office versus the head coach. And, you can sort of go through NFL teams and you see John Harbaugh obviously will have great power in New York. It feels like from the outside, the GM probably is answering to him more. We can go through different, Super Bowl winning coaches have more power. In baseball, it certainly felt like there was a period, and maybe it's expanded, where the front offices have tremendous power, that they see maybe the managers as more interchangeable. Doesn't mean they're right. What do you see because of analytics and data and so many data-driven decisions? You saw it in Moneyball. Like, that's where the dynamic between the front office and Art Howe, right? How has it changed in baseball? What does it look like right now?
The power structure has flipped completely. Managers used to run everything. You would have a general manager in place, but it would be more of a procedural thing from the GM side, because the GM would go to the manager and say, hey, what do you want to do? Who do we need? Who should I try and go out and get? Now, all of the evaluation is being done inside of the front office. It's with analytic staffs of 24 or more. It's with scouting staffs that are smaller than they used to be, but still in a number of organizations robust enough to have a voice in the room. And the manager serves as much as a functionary as anything. And I think the perfect example of this is the Boston Red Sox, your beloved Boston Red Sox. And Alex Cora was one of those very few managers left who actually had some yank. Like, if Alex Cora wanted something, he could push on the front office, and quite often the front office would try to do what he was looking for. But at the end of the day in Boston, there were organizational philosophies that Craig Breslow, the chief baseball officer, wanted to be reflected on his big league team and on the field, and they didn't feel like those were getting emphasized nearly enough. And in the power struggle between general manager, chief baseball officer, whatever you want to call it, and the field manager, 95% of the time, the GM's going to win that battle. That is the person who almost always goes directly to the owner because he's discussing payroll with him. And so there are those conversations, and the ability to forge a relationship with the owner is far more prevalent for GMs than it is for managers. So being a manager who still has input or still has significant input, you just don't find that a whole lot in baseball.
Jeff, the two New York teams, the Yankees, the Mets, obviously, in recent years with new ownership, the Mets have spent at a very high level. The Yankees have always spent, obviously, at a high level. How do they stack up in baseball in terms of organizational structure, how they're run? Obviously, the resources are at the very top of the league.
What the Yankees do well is operate on the margins, which is the sort of thing that you would think that the Rays or the Brewers are doing. But there are a couple of examples. Number one, the Yankees were so far ahead on catcher framing and so much better at everyone else when people realize that there is an art for catchers to taking pitches that are outside of the strike zone and presenting them to umpires and making it look like they're in the strike zone. And so the Yankees were stealing strikes at a higher rate than just about anyone else. And that started from catching instruction that emphasized this to them. And that to me is just good process. It's identifying something using analytics and having the right coaches in place to teach the players why it's important and how to go and do it. And beyond that, they have figured out, and you see it with Cam Schlittler and with Max Fried and with Will Warren, they have figured out how to have pitchers with command and with really good stuff. And, there are analytics called Stuff Plus. And Stuff Plus, the whole idea behind it is that every pitch you throw is going to get graded where a 100 is average, 110 is like one standard deviation above the mean, 122. So they grade it on just the raw quality of the stuff, like spin rate, the amount of break, horizontal and vertical, the entry slot of the arm, all these different things. But then you also have a location plus element, which is a little trickier to figure out, but can you command your pitches? Can you throw them to the spot where the catcher is expecting them? And Yankees pitchers are all over the top of Stuff Plus models. They have somehow down in their system hacked how to get pitchers to do this the right way. And Stuff Plus, Adrian, doesn't always translate to like success, but it tends to correlate pretty strongly with it. And the Yankees have arguably the best pitching staff in baseball right now because they've done a good job of developing players and figured out how to get young arms to do it the right way. It also helps in trades because the Yankees have traded multiple catchers in recent seasons, whether it's Carlos Narvaez to the Boston Red Sox, Rafael Flores to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they got David Bednar, their closer, and Elmer Rodriguez, a future rotation arm, out of it. So they do a good job teaching catchers how to frame. Suddenly other teams see this in their own analytics and want to go and trade for the guys. So when you have good process in place, it allows you to, it permeates the organization. It's not just reflecting itself at the big league level. It's everywhere. And that's what teams all across baseball, all across sports are really looking for now.
Jeff, I know you've got your favorite, my favorite too, high school prospect in America, Jack Passan. I know he's got a game tonight. I know you're headed. You're going to sneak off to that. But man, it was great visiting with you. This was a lot of fun. People can watch and listen right to Sources Tell Jeff Passan, where you get your podcasts. They can see it on YouTube. Most of your shows are on. They're all going to be on YouTube too, right?
Whoa, they're putting me on TV these days. How terrifying is that?
Well, I sent you a picture. I saw you in my office, right up there. You were on with, so you're on TV too. You've been on TV.
And as I said to you, what are you doing watching ESPN2? Go. And of course, what was your response?
I thought I might see you.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Great to visit. Say hello to everybody, Jeff. I know we'll catch up soon, man.
Look forward to it. Thanks for having me, Woj.
Okay. A big thank you to our guest today on the program, ESPN's Jeff Passan. Be sure to catch a new episode of the program every Wednesday right here.